In this brief episode, we give you an update on the possible but still unlikely revival of the SAVE plan and tell you what you should consider if you're still on forbearance. Let's get started. Are your student loan payments or loan balances a major obstacle in your financial life? Then tune in and let's escape student loan debt. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Escape Student Loan Debt podcast. I shared with you in our last session that we're kind of in a holding period when it comes to a lot of things with federal student loans. And as a result, if there's like a bi-weekly period where there's really nothing to say, I might hop on and say, hey guys, I have nothing to say. But we're not going to just publish an episode for publishing's sake. So in transparency, I was thinking that we may not even have an episode this week. There have been some small updates that we'll cover, but nothing to me that rose to the level of like, oh, let's get on and do a whole episode on it. We'll share some of those updates. But then there was an update to the court case as it relates to the SAVE plan. I'm not going to go through all of the background when it comes to SAVE. If you're on the plan, you're probably familiar with the background. But the long and short of it is, this payment plan was created by the Biden administration. It was far and away the most cost-effective repayment plan with the most forgiveness terms. And as a result, millions of people flocked onto that plan. And as a result of the Republican administration essentially saying, which I don't think is like necessarily completely without merit, hey, you can't sign up to forgive that much student loan debt without going through Congress. It's been in the court and it's been pretty much dead in the water. If you're on SAVE, you're in administrative forbearance, you can't get onto the SAVE plan if you're trying to get on it. And if you're still in forbearance, you don't have to make a payment, but interest is accruing, and any payments that you choose to make, you're not getting credit towards forgiveness programs for income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness. Now, there was an agreement between the parties who were a part of that lawsuit, the Department of Education and the party that brought the lawsuit saying it was unconstitutional, that being the SAVE plan, that they weren't going to offer it, that they were going to phase the plan out by 2028. They were not going to allow new borrowers onto the plan. They basically were saying, hey, you took us to court and like this thing that we were in court for, we don't even believe that. That was from a previous administration. We agree with you. So, we are in agreement. And because of that, the court actually came and said, hey, in order to have a suit like this move forward, there actually has to be a dispute. I cannot rule, or there's no point in me ruling when there's no dispute between the two parties. And as a result, this doesn't need to be in the court at all anymore. This isn't my business, for lack of a better phrasing. And as crazy as that sounds, that lack of finality actually means that the SAVE plan is in flux, right? It's not technically being closed. It hasn't been closed yet because the Department of Education was really just waiting for the judge to say, hey, I agree to close it. I'm signing off on the agreement that you made. So with the absence of that closure, the SAVE plan is kind of in the wind, where there are people who are saying, since this plan was going to be phased out by 2028 already, maybe there's a possibility that they let people make payments on that plan until it's phased out, just like they're letting people make payments on the pay-as-you-earn plan, just like they're letting people make payments on the income contingent repayment plan. So that was something where if you're in a Reddit thread or follow some other people in the space, I don't think anybody who does this every day has been definitively saying the SAVE plan is back, but there's a lot of lay people out there who are saying, oh, maybe there's a chance that we will get the SAVE plan after all. I will say I've been wrong before. I would hope that if you listen to this podcast, you would say there have been many times that I've been wrong about federal student loans, but I don't think there's any possibility at all that you'll be able to make payments under SAVE. They're going to take this to a different district court. That district court is probably going to either give them the finality that they're looking for, or they'll escalate it to a higher court. But there is a desire from all parties involved for the SAVE plan to not exist. And even if it takes a long time, I'm not saying that it won't be around until 2028. What I am saying is I see no scenario where they let you make payments that count towards IDR and public service loan forgiveness in advance of the plan being phased out. So I know that's a big nothing burger to say. You probably heard these things. I don't think that it's going to come to pass, but I did want to speak to what it might mean for someone who is still on SAVE forbearance and has been waiting to figure out what happens. What I would say is, If you are on Save Forbearance still, and you haven't tried to get onto either new or old IBR or onto the pay-as-you-earn plan, it is likely, I would say it should be, because you either can't afford the payment or the timing of it is inconvenient while you pursue other financial objectives. That could be paying down other consumer debt. That could be investing, and you're saying, I'll cross that bridge when it comes to it, but as long as I don't have to make this payment, I'm going to put this money in the market. It could be building up your emergency reserves. If that's the scenario, then I think that there's a valid, argument to be made that, hey, just stay on it. If you're not pursuing forgiveness and you know you're going to have to pay those student loans off in full, they are charging you interest. But if you have found a way to at least cover the interest or make as much of a payment as you can when you can make it, but you want the flexibility of not having it every month, I would say that's the reason to stay on forbearance. If you're on, say, forbearance because you were hoping that this turned out in your favor in terms of receiving credit towards public service loan forgiveness, or if you're on, say, forbearance and you've been waiting but you don't have a financial reason to do so, you need to get off of it. This, to me, is not something that's going to turn around in terms of, oh man, this judge saw it our way and all of a sudden we can make payments again. So my recommendation, if you are trying to start getting credit now, would be to figure out which payment plan for which you're eligible. The ideal is to be eligible for new IBR. The second best is if you're eligible for pay-as-you-earn. The worst, unfortunately, is if you're only eligible for old IBR, and try to chart a path for when you're going to start making payments. Now, I'm going to add a caveat to that I haven't in past episodes, and part of the reason is because we were just further away from that plan being introduced, but I also wanted to run some scenarios for myself, and we're going to do an episode just about this plan in a future episode. So I've been doing some more calculations under the Repayment Assistance Plan. That's the new payment plan that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is going to release, hopefully sometime in the middle of 2026. That payment plan is one that it requires you to pay for 30 years until any remaining balances are forgiven instead of 20 or 25 like with other payment plans. And what I would say that I haven't said before is if you have an adjusted gross income of more than $100,000, it is highly unlikely that the repayment assistance plan would be beneficial for you as compared to plans like even old IBR. But what I'm going to add that I've never added before is based on the calculations that I've been running, if your family adjusted gross income is under $100,000, and especially if you have children, the repayment assistance plan, strictly when it comes to the payment that it requires each month, not the forgiveness terms, just talking about the payment, it's actually pretty cost effective in those scenarios. The reason has to do with things that we'll talk about in that future episode, but essentially the percentage of your adjusted gross income that you pay goes down the lower your adjusted gross income is. So essentially everybody above $100,000 pays 10%, but if you make $40,000, you pay a significantly lower percentage, and it's definitely something where I've run some modeling and can see the benefit for certain families of signing up for that plan. So the caveat that I'm going to add is in 2 weeks, when we do that episode on the repayment assistance plan, we're going to update our calculator for the Escape Student Loan Debt Guide to Income-Driven Repayment Plans. I want you to run some modeling for that plan. And if you think that you might sign up for that plan as compared to the ones that already exist, that might be another scenario where you wait to move out of Save, right? Like rather than going from Save right now to income-based repayment, maybe you just wait a few months and go from Save to the repayment assistance plan as compared to having to make two transitions by moving now. So I know that that's not a very long and complicated episode, but that's the update that I have for you on the Save plan. For some other things like the lawsuit that I told you all about, where people who have been defrauded by their institution could apply to have their student loans forgiven, there was a court case that essentially said, hey, you being the Department of Education, until this date to decide whether all these extra people were eligible to have their student loans wiped away. And if you do not make the decision by that date, we're going to decide for you. And we're going to say that those people all get their student loans forgiven. The Department of Education missed that deadline, and we were waiting in the last episode for the court to come back and say whether they were going to grant them an extension. The court did not grant them an extension. They said everybody who's in that category whose decision had not been made, doesn't matter if it would have been yes, would have been no, it's yes because you missed the deadline. So if you are a person who actually filled out the application to have your student loans wiped away, and you went to one of the schools that is eligible for discharge on that list, and we'll put that information in the show notes, then it may take a very long time, but your student loans as a default judgment will be wiped away. So a bit of good news if you went to like the ITT Techs of the world or the Corinthian colleges of the world, but probably impacts a very small number of our listeners. But if it impacts even one, that's still a big impact. I told you at the beginning this was a mini episode, not much to share this go round, but I am expecting a more full episode in 2 weeks where we dig into the details of the Repayment Assistance Plan and give you all the information you need to have your student loans forgiven, reduced, reorganized, or expedited. Hope to see you then. From Escape Student Loan Debt, this was the Escape Student Loan Debt Podcast, a show for established professionals whose student loan payments or loan balances are impacting their marriage, their business, their credit, or their dream of achieving homeownership.